What is the human mind? The human mind is a vast and intricate frontier, shaping perception, emotion, and action, yet remaining profoundly enigmatic. Every thought, memory, and feeling emerges from this complex nexus, linking consciousness to existence and illuminating the essence of what it means to be human. At its core, the mind is the seat of cognition and awareness, an intangible entity encompassing intellect, imagination, and introspection. It is both a repository of experiences and a dynamic engine for reasoning, reflection, and creativity, constantly interpreting and reconstructing reality. Functionally, the mind operates through a delicate interplay of neural networks, electrochemical signals, and synaptic connections. Sensory input is filtered and processed, memories retrieved and recombined, while emotions modulate responses. Each thought is a product of innumerable microprocesses, converging in patterns that define behavior and perception. These connections are not fixed, they evolve, forming a web of interactions that shape identity and consciousness. From infancy to adulthood, the mind undergoes continual development. Experiences, learning, and reflection refine cognitive pathways, while trauma, culture, and environment leave indelible imprints. Neuroplasticity allows for adaptation, demonstrating the mind's capacity for transformation and growth. The mind profoundly influences human life, guiding decisions, moral judgments, and creativity. It underlies art, science, and philosophy, bridging the inner self with the external world. Ultimately, understanding the mind invites both humility and wonder, revealing the delicate balance between reason and intuition, knowledge and mystery. How does the brain relate to the mind? The brain is a physical organ composed of cells, chemicals, and electrical activity, while the mind refers to the realm of thoughts, emotions, intentions, and awareness. Philosophically, the mind is not a separate substance, but an emergent phenomenon arising from the brain's organized complexity. Neural activity operates through networks of neurons that communicate via electrochemical signals. Patterns of firing encode perception, memory, and decision-making. As information flows through interconnected regions, subjective experience appears, suggesting that mental states are processes, rather than static entities. Connections between brain regions integrate sensation, memory, and emotion into a unified sense of self. Across development, the brain continuously changes through plasticity. Learning, experience, and environment reshape neural pathways, and the mind evolves alongside these changes. Childhood growth, adult adaptation, and even recovery after injury show that mental capacities are dynamic, not fixed. The impact of this relationship is profound. Understanding the brain-mind link informs psychology, medicine, ethics, and education. It reframes responsibility, mental health, and identity, emphasizing care, context, and adaptability rather than rigid determinism. Ultimately, the mind can be seen as what the brain does, not where it is. The relationship is neither reducible to simple mechanics nor detached from biology. It is a dialogue between matter and meaning, where physical processes give rise to reflection, creativity, and conscious life. What are the main parts of the brain involved in thinking? Thinking arises from coordinated activity across several brain regions, rather than a single mental seat. The cerebral cortex, especially the prefrontal cortex, plays a central role by enabling reasoning, planning, judgment, and self-reflection. Parietal areas support attention and spatial reasoning, temporal regions contribute memory and language, and occipital regions supply visual interpretation that feeds abstract thought. At a deeper level, thinking depends on dynamic neural processes. Neurons communicate through electrical signals and chemical synapses, forming networks that integrate perception, memory, and emotion. The thalamus acts as a relay, the basal ganglia refine decision selection, and the cerebellum subtly optimizes cognitive timing. Connections among these structures allow thoughts to emerge as patterns, not isolated events. These systems are not fixed. Brain development reshapes thinking from childhood through adolescence as the prefrontal cortex matures and connections are refined. Across adulthood, learning and experience alter synaptic strength, while aging introduces both decline and compensatory adaptation, revealing the brain's enduring plasticity. The impact of this architecture is profound. It allows humans to imagine futures, evaluate values, and construct meaning. Thinking becomes both a biological function and a philosophical bridge between matter and mind. Understanding its neural foundations deepens respect for cognition as an evolving, interconnected process. Such insight encourages humility, responsibility, and wonder when reflecting on human thought. How do neurons communicate with each other? Neurons, the fundamental units of the brain, engage in intricate communication processes that allow the human body to perceive, act, and react. This process is known as neural transmission. Neurons communicate through electrical impulses that travel along their axons. When a neuron is stimulated, an electrical signal, or action potential, is generated and travels down the axon to the synapse, the junction between two neurons. At the synapse, the electrical signal is converted into a chemical signal. Neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers, are released into the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors on the adjacent neuron. This binding process generates a new electrical impulse in the receiving neuron, thus continuing the communication chain. The connections formed between neurons, known as synapses, play a crucial role in shaping learning and memory. These connections are dynamic and can be strengthened or weakened depending on the frequency and intensity of the signals exchanged, illustrating the plasticity of the brain. Neural communication is not a static process. It evolves with experience. As individuals learn, the pathways between neurons are refined, facilitating more efficient information transfer. This ongoing change profoundly impacts cognitive functions, behavior, and even emotional responses. The process of neural communication, by enabling complex mental and physical activities, remains central to human experience. In conclusion, neural communication is the cornerstone of thought, action, and perception, constantly shaping who we are and how we interact with the world. What is neuroplasticity, and why is it important? Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize and form new neural connections in response to learning, experience, or injury. This adaptive process enables the brain to continuously change and reshape itself, allowing for recovery and growth. It reflects the brain's dynamic nature, showing that cognitive and motor functions are not fixed, but are malleable throughout life. At its core, neuroplasticity involves two key mechanisms: synaptic plasticity, where the strength of existing synapses is modified, and structural plasticity, where the formation of new neural pathways occurs. These processes allow the brain to reroute information and adapt its functioning based on new stimuli or environmental demands. Connections between neurons, strengthened by repeated experiences, become more efficient and are integral in learning new skills or recovering lost functions. The development of neuroplasticity is most profound in early life, but continues in adulthood, though at a slower pace. It is vital for learning, memory, and recovery after neurological trauma such as strokes or injuries. The impact of neuroplasticity is far-reaching, influencing mental health, cognitive abilities, and our capacity to adapt to new challenges. By harnessing neuroplasticity, we can enhance brain function, improve rehabilitation efforts, and even delay the effects of aging. In conclusion, neuroplasticity underscores the brain's potential for transformation, revealing the depth of our capacity to grow, adapt, and heal across the lifespan. How does memory work in the human mind? Memory, at its core, refers to the capacity of the brain to encode, store, and retrieve information. It is an essential cognitive function that allows us to recall past experiences, learn new concepts, and form personal identities. Memory is not a single entity, but rather a dynamic process shaped by interactions between various regions of the brain, particularly the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. The process begins with sensory input, where information from the external world is absorbed through perception. This information is then encoded into short-term memory, a temporary storage space. Through repetition and consolidation, this information may become long-term memory. In this process, synaptic connections between neurons strengthen, a phenomenon known as synaptic plasticity. The more frequently these connections are activated, the more solid the memory becomes. The development of memory is influenced by several factors, including age, attention, and emotional significance. Memories are not static, but rather subject to change and distortion over time. Recollection itself is a reconstructive process where the brain fills in gaps, sometimes altering the original memory. Memory impacts every aspect of human experience, from decision-making to the formation of beliefs. It defines our understanding of reality and guides our actions. In essence, memory is not a simple recording device, but a deeply interconnected, evolving force that defines our sense of self. What is the difference between short-term and long-term memory? Short-term memory refers to the brain's temporary storage system, holding information for a limited period, typically seconds to minutes. In contrast, long-term memory is the brain's more enduring storage system, capable of retaining vast amounts of information for extended periods ranging from hours to a lifetime. Short-term memory functions by temporarily holding incoming information for immediate use or processing, such as recalling a phone number long enough to dial it. If information is rehearsed or deemed important, it may transition into long-term memory, where it is encoded for prolonged retention. Long-term memory is connected to processes like consolidation, where short-term memories are strengthened and linked to existing knowledge, making them more resistant to forgetting. This connection forms the basis of learning and the formation of expertise over time. Over time, the efficiency and capacity of both short-term and long-term memory evolve. Short-term memory tends to remain stable, but long-term memory can grow with repeated exposure and active engagement. Aging, however, may affect the retrieval processes of long-term memory, diminishing access to stored information. The distinction between these two memory systems influences how we learn and interact with the world. Short-term memory's limitations can hinder multitasking, while long-term memory shapes our understanding, emotional responses, and decision-making processes. The dichotomy between short-term and long-term memory highlights the complexity of human cognition. Short-term memory serves as a bridge for information processing, while long-term memory provides the foundation for personal growth, expertise, and the continuity of our life narrative. How do senses influence our thoughts and perception? Our senses are the gateways through which we experience the world, profoundly shaping our thoughts and perceptions. The definition of perception involves not just the reception of sensory information, but its interpretation by the brain. Thoughts are influenced by what we see, hear, smell, touch, and taste, as each sensory input carries unique data that informs our understanding of the world. The way this works is through the intricate process of sensory processing, where stimuli are first detected by receptors in our sensory organs. These signals are then sent to the brain, where they are interpreted based on prior experiences, expectations, and emotions. The brain's interpretation creates mental representations of reality, but these representations are not always accurate reflections of the external world, as they are colored by our perceptions. The connection between sensory input and thought lies in the brain's ability to form cognitive maps, associations, and emotional responses. These connections enable us to make sense of abstract concepts, recognize patterns, and even anticipate outcomes. Over time, our perceptions evolve based on new sensory experiences, cultural influences, and personal growth. This constant development leads to a fluidity in how we think and perceive, enabling us to adapt to new situations. Ultimately, our senses form the foundation of our perceptions, shaping how we think, react, and understand the world around us. What is consciousness, and how is it studied? Consciousness refers to the state of being aware of and able to think about one's own existence, thoughts, and surroundings. It is the fundamental experience of awareness that allows individuals to perceive, interpret, and respond to the world. Philosophically, it raises deep questions about the nature of self-awareness, personal identity, and the mind-body connection. Consciousness operates through a network of brain processes that allow sensory information to be integrated with emotional responses, memories, and thoughts. Neural activity in regions, such as the prefrontal cortex, is vital for higher-order cognitive functions, like reasoning and reflective thinking. This system enables awareness to emerge, transforming raw sensory data into coherent, conscious experiences. The connections between consciousness and various mental processes are complex. Perception, attention, memory, and emotions are intricately tied to the conscious experience. Our ability to selectively focus on certain stimuli, remember past events, and interpret emotions is intertwined with the consciousness that organizes these mental events into meaningful experiences. Over time, consciousness develops as individuals grow, with shifts occurring due to maturation, learning, and changes in the brain. Infants, for example, slowly develop the capacity for self-awareness and complex thought as their neural networks form. Consciousness has a profound impact on decision-making, personal growth, and social interactions. It shapes how we understand our existence and influences our behavior. Ultimately, consciousness remains a central, elusive question in both philosophy and neuroscience, with ongoing research continuing to explore its depths. How does attention affect learning and decision-making? Attention is a cognitive process that enables individuals to focus on certain stimuli while filtering out irrelevant information. It is a vital mechanism that directs mental resources to specific tasks, thus influencing both the acquisition of knowledge and the process of making decisions. Attention works by enhancing the processing of information, prioritizing specific stimuli over others, and shaping the brain's ability to filter, focus, and retain information. When attention is directed toward a particular task, the brain allocates resources to relevant cognitive networks, improving learning efficiency and decision-making speed. This selective focus is often a result of both conscious control and unconscious cues from the environment. Attention is closely linked to memory, as it dictates which pieces of information are retained. In learning, sustained attention enhances the encoding of new knowledge, making it more accessible later. In decision-making, attention helps prioritize the most relevant options, thus facilitating quicker, more informed choices. The capacity for attention evolves throughout life. In childhood, attention is less stable and requires development through practice and environmental interactions. As one matures, attentional control improves, allowing for more efficient learning and decision-making. Strong attention leads to better learning outcomes and more effective decision-making, while attention deficits can impair both processes, leading to mistakes or missed opportunities. Ultimately, attention is foundational to learning and decision-making, influencing the ability to absorb knowledge and make thoughtful, rational decisions. What is perception, and how can it be subjective? Perception refers to the process by which individuals interpret and make sense of sensory information. It involves both the detection of stimuli and the cognitive processes that translate these raw signals into meaningful experiences. Perception is not merely passive reception. It is actively shaped by various factors, such as attention, memory, and prior knowledge. The process begins when sensory receptors detect stimuli, such as light or sound. These signals are transmitted to the brain, where they are processed and integrated with previous experiences. The brain does not simply record data. It filters, interprets, and constructs perceptions based on a combination of external stimuli and internal expectations. Perception is deeply connected to personal history, emotions, and social context. It is influenced by cultural norms, individual biases, and even neurological factors, such as differences in brain structure. These elements contribute to the fact that two people may perceive the same event in radically different ways. As we grow and experience new environments, our perceptions can evolve. Cognitive flexibility allows individuals to adapt their perceptions based on new information or changing circumstances. Subjective perception impacts decision-making, interpersonal relationships, and worldview. It can shape one's reality, influencing everything from daily actions to broader philosophical beliefs. In conclusion, perception is an intricate and subjective process. It is more than a passive reflection of the world. It is a dynamic, personalized construction that varies from person to person. How do humans process language and communicate thoughts? Humans process language as a dynamic interaction between cognitive functions, neural pathways, and environmental stimuli. Language is both a tool and a vessel for conveying thoughts, emotions, and intentions. It transcends the mere exchange of words, shaping the way individuals understand and relate to the world. The mechanism of language processing begins in the brain, where auditory and visual information is decoded. This process occurs through specialized areas, most notably Broca's area for speech production and Wernicke's area for comprehension. These neural centers work in harmony with the auditory cortex, which translates sound into meaningful linguistic units. The brain then maps these units to existing knowledge, facilitating the construction of ideas. Connections in the brain play a crucial role in this mechanism. The left hemisphere predominantly governs language, yet recent studies suggest that the right hemisphere also contributes, especially in the context of nuance, emotion, and intonation. The integration of sensory input with cognition allows humans to adapt their linguistic choices to social and contextual cues, reflecting the adaptive nature of language. Language evolves as both an individual and collective process. Over time, it adapts through cultural shifts, technological advancements, and personal experiences, constantly reshaping thought and communication. The impact of language extends beyond communication. It shapes identity, perception, and reality. It influences social structures, relationships, and even political landscapes. In essence, language is not just a vehicle of thought, but a force that forms the fabric of human experience. What role does imagination play in problem solving? Imagination, at its core, is the ability to form mental images or concepts of things not present to the senses. In the context of problem solving, it serves as a dynamic cognitive tool that enables individuals to envision possibilities, anticipate outcomes, and explore alternatives beyond immediate constraints. At the heart of imagination's role in problem solving lies its capacity to generate hypothetical scenarios. This process allows individuals to consider multiple solutions simultaneously, engaging in a form of mental simulation. The mind experiments with variables, modifying elements within an imagined scenario to predict consequences and evaluate solutions before they are acted upon in reality. This process hinges on both creative and critical thinking, where imagination isn't merely about wild ideas, but about structured innovation, applying abstract thought to concrete challenges. Imagination also fosters connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. It bridges gaps, linking knowledge across disciplines, and enabling novel approaches. In scientific breakthroughs or artistic endeavors, these connections manifest as unconventional, yet effective, solutions that challenge the status quo. As individuals develop, their imaginative faculties become more sophisticated. Early childhood creativity evolves into a refined problem-solving tool capable of navigating complex, abstract issues. Over time, the ability to draw from a rich mental reservoir of diverse ideas enhances one's capacity for innovative thinking. In the end, imagination profoundly impacts problem-solving by enriching the mental landscape, offering a broader spectrum of potential solutions, and ultimately guiding individuals toward more insightful, adaptable, and creative resolutions. How do emotions influence thinking and reasoning? Emotions, often perceived as irrational forces, play a fundamental role in shaping human thinking and reasoning. At their core, emotions are psychological and physiological responses to stimuli that influence our perceptions, decision-making, and cognitive processes. While traditionally viewed as opposing reason, emotions and logic are deeply interconnected. The process begins when an emotional stimulus triggers an automatic response in the brain, activating areas like the amygdala, which processes emotional information. This, in turn, affects the prefrontal cortex, responsible for higher cognitive functions such as reasoning and planning. Emotions thus act as a lens through which we interpret reality, filtering our thoughts and shaping judgments based on personal experiences, biases, and moods. The emotional context can amplify or distort reasoning, steering decisions in ways that seem irrational, yet are deeply rooted in individual emotional landscapes. These connections reveal that emotions, far from hindering rationality, often guide us toward swift, adaptive decisions when time is limited. As such, emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, becomes essential in refining our reasoning abilities. Throughout life, emotions evolve with personal growth, social experiences, and cultural influences, altering how we reason. Emotional maturity enhances balanced decision-making, while unchecked emotional responses can cloud judgment, leading to poor choices. In the end, emotions and reasoning are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they are dynamic partners in shaping the complexity of human thought. What is the difference between intuition and analytical thinking? Intuition and analytical thinking represent two distinct cognitive processes by which humans make decisions and solve problems. Intuition is the ability to understand or know something without the need for conscious reasoning. It emerges quickly and unconsciously, often drawing upon prior experiences and patterns. Analytical thinking, on the other hand, involves a more deliberate and systematic approach, where a problem is broken down into its components and evaluated logically. The mechanism of intuition operates through rapid pattern recognition, where the brain connects previous experiences with new situations, often without the individual being fully aware of it. This contrasts with analytical thinking, which involves conscious deliberation, evaluating data, and drawing conclusions based on evidence. Intuitive decisions often come from a place of gut feeling, whereas analytical decisions are methodical and structured. Connections between these two processes exist, as intuition can inform analysis and vice versa. For example, a strong intuitive sense might lead one to explore a particular hypothesis analytically. Similarly, an analytical approach can refine intuitive judgments, providing a deeper understanding of why something feels right or wrong. Both forms of thinking can develop over time. Analytical skills are often honed through education and experience, while intuition strengthens with exposure to diverse experiences and the refinement of one's subconscious processing. Ultimately, the interplay between intuition and analytical thinking shapes how we navigate the world, influencing both our personal and professional decisions. While they may differ in approach, their combined impact is profound, helping us balance instinct with reason. How does the mind develop from childhood to adulthood? The development of the mind from childhood to adulthood is a profound journey of transformation, shaping the individual's thoughts, emotions, and perceptions. It is a process intricately woven through a series of stages marked by growth, learning, and adaptation. Early childhood, with its malleable neural architecture, serves as the foundation for cognitive abilities. The brain's neuroplasticity at this stage allows for rapid acquisition of language, motor skills, and basic reasoning. As the individual matures, experiences create and strengthen neural connections, refining the mind's capabilities. Cognitive development proceeds in phases, as outlined by theorists like Piaget, who postulated that children move through stages of concrete and abstract reasoning. In adolescence, the mind becomes more adept at abstract thought, problem-solving, and moral reasoning. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like decision-making and impulse control, undergoes significant refinement, reaching full maturity in early adulthood. Throughout these years, the mind builds complex networks of thought, learning not only from formal education, but also from social interactions, cultural contexts, and personal introspection. These connections form the basis of individual identity and worldview. The impact of this developmental process extends beyond intellectual faculties. Emotional regulation, social awareness, and ethical reasoning all evolve as the mind matures, influencing the way individuals engage with the world. In adulthood, the mind is a sophisticated integration of these various elements, capable of reflective thinking and nuanced understanding. Ultimately, the development of the mind is an ongoing process, an unfolding of potential shaped by experience, biology, and environment. What is the role of experience in shaping the mind? Experience plays a pivotal role in shaping the mind, acting as the foundational force that molds our cognitive and emotional responses. At its core, experience is the process through which we perceive, interpret, and interact with the world, gradually informing our worldview. It acts as the raw material from which understanding and knowledge are crafted, continuously influencing mental structures and thought patterns. The mechanism by which experience shapes the mind is through neuroplasticity, where the brain's connections adapt and reorganize in response to new information. Every encounter, whether sensory, emotional, or intellectual, triggers a process of encoding, retention, and retrieval that refines existing mental frameworks. As such, the mind is never static, but is constantly evolving, shifting in response to new experiences. This dynamic process creates connections within the brain, linking disparate concepts and ideas, enhancing our ability to think critically, empathize with others, and navigate complex environments. Through these connections, experience enriches our intellectual depth and emotional intelligence, shaping both how we think and how we feel. Over time, repeated exposure to certain experiences fosters deeper learning and more nuanced perspectives. Experiences lead to growth, maturity, and, at times, transformation. The impact of experience is profound. It can alter our behaviors, influence our decisions, and redefine our identity. Ultimately, experience not only defines the mind's current state, but also influences its future potential, steering it toward new horizons of understanding and self-awareness. How does the brain change during adolescence? Adolescence is a critical period in human development, marked by significant brain changes that shape an individual's cognitive, emotional, and social capabilities. The adolescent brain is not simply a miniature version of the adult brain, but a dynamic organ undergoing profound transformations. During this phase, the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and reasoning, undergoes significant maturation. However, this process is gradual, with the prefrontal cortex not fully developing until the mid-20s. Meanwhile, the limbic system, which regulates emotions and reward processing, matures earlier, often leading to a heightened sensitivity to emotions and a tendency to seek novelty and excitement. One of the key mechanisms at play is synaptic pruning, where excess neural connections are eliminated, allowing for more efficient communication between brain regions. This process is coupled with myelination, the insulation of nerve fibers, which improves the speed and efficiency of neural transmission. As a result of these changes, adolescents experience shifts in their behavior, often marked by increased risk-taking and emotional volatility. The changes in neural connectivity also enhance the capacity for complex thought, but emotional and social experiences take precedence, influencing their perceptions and choices. The impact of these transformations is profound. While adolescence offers the potential for growth, it also introduces vulnerability to stress, peer influence, and mental health challenges. The brain's plasticity during this period provides an opportunity for both positive development and the cultivation of lifelong habits. What are common mental milestones in early childhood? Mental milestones in early childhood encompass the cognitive, emotional, and social developments that enable a child to interact meaningfully with their environment. These milestones serve as markers of a child's ability to understand, interpret, and respond to their world in increasingly sophisticated ways. Early cognitive development begins with the ability to focus attention, recognize faces, and develop memory. Emotional milestones follow closely, beginning with basic expressions of joy and fear, and evolving into complex emotional responses to social interactions. At the heart of early childhood development lies the intricate mechanism of brain plasticity. This is the brain's ability to reorganize and adapt in response to experiences. The connection between the child's neural development and their interaction with caregivers plays a crucial role in shaping emotional regulation, social skills, and learning. Through this interaction, children also begin to form the basic structures for problem-solving and logical thinking, allowing them to process complex emotions and navigate the world with greater autonomy. The impact of these milestones is profound, laying the foundation for a future learning, self-regulation, and interpersonal relationships. Early cognitive and emotional achievements provide the groundwork for the child's intellectual growth and emotional well-being, which will affect their future in both academic and personal realms. In conclusion, early childhood milestones are not just developmental checkpoints. They are the very mechanisms through which a child begins to understand and engage with the world around them, influencing their lifelong growth. How does learning new skills affect the brain? Learning new skills is a transformative process that reshapes the very architecture of the brain. As we acquire new abilities, the brain engages in intricate cognitive activities, making subtle yet profound changes at both the neural and synaptic levels. The human brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to rewire and adapt, is key to this transformation. When we encounter novel information or tasks, neurons form new connections, creating a dynamic network that reinforces new pathways and strengthens cognitive functions. The mechanism behind learning involves synaptic plasticity, wherein the repeated activation of neural pathways leads to the strengthening of synapses. This is known as long-term potentiation (LTP), a process where frequent stimulation of one neuron by another makes the transmission of signals more efficient. With practice, these pathways become more refined, enhancing the speed and accuracy of the skill being developed. The development of these connections manifests in different brain regions. For example, motor skills are often associated with the cerebellum, while cognitive skills may activate the prefrontal cortex. As we continue to learn, the brain structure evolves, with gray matter density increasing in areas related to the newly learned skills. The impact of learning new skills extends beyond just gaining knowledge. It improves cognitive flexibility, sharpens memory, and promotes emotional resilience. By constantly adapting, the brain nurtures intellectual growth and emotional well-being. In conclusion, the brain's capacity for growth through learning is a testament to its dynamic nature, highlighting how new skills are not just an accumulation of knowledge, but a redefinition of our very cognitive and emotional selves. Mental health and behavior. How do stress and anxiety affect the mind? Stress and anxiety are mental health conditions that intricately affect the mind, influencing how we process thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Stress can emerge from external pressures, while anxiety often arises from an internal fear of the unknown. Both conditions can significantly alter cognitive functioning, leading to distorted perceptions and difficulty in decision-making. At the core of these effects is the brain's response to perceived danger. When stressed or anxious, the body releases cortisol and adrenaline, preparing the individual for fight or flight. However, prolonged exposure to these hormones can impair memory, reduce focus, and alter emotional regulation. The amygdala, which controls emotions, becomes more active, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and judgment, shows decreased activity. These neurochemical changes create a feedback loop, wherein the individual's anxiety perpetuates stress, and vice versa, further inhibiting their ability to cope effectively. Over time, these responses become ingrained, forming maladaptive behaviors and thought patterns that can be challenging to break. Stress and anxiety, if left unmanaged, can reshape one's view of the world and themselves, leading to a diminished sense of well-being. However, through intervention, mindfulness, and reflection, the mind can regain balance, gradually retraining these pathways. In the end, the mind's resilience is often more powerful than the stress and anxiety that once threatened it. What is the connection between thoughts and mental health? The relationship between thoughts and mental health is a profound and intricate one, where the mind's inner workings greatly influence overall well-being. Thoughts are the internal dialogues and cognitive processes that shape our understanding of the world, ourselves, and others. They are not merely passive events, but active constructs that mold perception and behavior. At the core of this interaction is the mechanism of cognitive processing, where our interpretations of events, positive or negative, affect our emotional and psychological state. A negative thought pattern, for instance, can give rise to feelings of anxiety, depression, or stress, while positive thought patterns can foster resilience, hope, and inner peace. These thought processes are deeply interconnected with mental health, as repeated negative thought cycles often lead to mental health disorders, while cognitive restructuring and mindfulness can alleviate these conditions. Thought patterns also influence the brain's neuroplasticity, where the brain adapts and rewires itself in response to changing beliefs and perceptions. As people grow and encounter different life experiences, their thoughts evolve, allowing for the potential for change. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, encourages individuals to reframe their thoughts, promoting a healthier mindset and better mental health outcomes. In conclusion, thoughts are not mere bystanders in the experience of mental health. They are fundamental players. The ability to recognize, understand, and, where necessary, alter our thinking patterns is crucial for maintaining mental well-being and fostering growth in one's emotional life. How do habits and behaviors form in the brain? Habits and behaviors are the result of complex processes in the brain that involve the formation and reinforcement of neural connections. These connections arise from repeated actions, which establish pathways that become more efficient over time. The brain essentially learns from the repetition of behaviors, reinforcing the patterns that are most frequently activated. Initially, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and self-control, is heavily involved in initiating actions. However, with repetition, control gradually shifts to the basal ganglia, a region that governs routine behaviors. The process begins when an individual performs a behavior, and the brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter that signals pleasure or reward. This positive reinforcement strengthens the connection between the action and its outcome. Over time, this leads to automaticity, where behaviors become ingrained and require less conscious thought to perform. In the context of habit formation, the brain operates like a feedback loop. The more a behavior is repeated, the stronger the neural pathways become, making it increasingly difficult to change. However, change is possible. New habits can form when individuals intentionally introduce new behaviors that disrupt established pathways. This requires time, patience, and consistent effort, as the brain needs to create fresh connections to replace old ones. Habits shape identity and influence behavior, reflecting our ongoing adaptation to environmental demands. Understanding this process opens the door to purposeful change and self-growth. What is the role of sleep in mental functioning? Sleep, a fundamental biological process, serves as the cornerstone for mental well-being, facilitating cognitive restoration and emotional regulation. During sleep, the brain undergoes critical restorative processes, consolidating memories, reinforcing neural connections, and enhancing problem-solving capabilities. Sleep is not merely a passive state. It is an active process that aligns with the brain's cyclical rhythms, particularly during REM rapid eye movement and non-REM stages. Each phase plays a distinct role in processing information, solving emotional stress, and clearing metabolic waste. The brain's mechanism for sleep involves intricate neurochemical signaling, where neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and melatonin govern the transitions between wakefulness and rest. As we enter deeper stages of sleep, the brain consolidates short-term memories into long-term storage, strengthening the neural connections critical for learning. Meanwhile, the body restores physical energy through a decrease in sympathetic nervous system activity, allowing emotional regulation to occur. Over time, sleep patterns evolve, influenced by age, lifestyle, and external stressors. Children, for instance, experience more REM sleep to support rapid learning, while adults may witness a decline in deep sleep stages. Inadequate sleep disrupts cognitive performance, impairing decision-making, attention, and emotional stability. Chronic sleep deprivation can even alter brain structure, increasing susceptibility to mental health conditions. Thus, sleep is indispensable to mental functioning, operating as a cornerstone for both the mind's daily regeneration and its long-term health. Without it, cognitive and emotional balance becomes compromised, highlighting its centrality in our lives. How do mental disorders impact cognition and emotions? Mental disorders significantly influence both cognition and emotions, shaping the way individuals process information, react to stimuli, and interact with the world around them. At their core, these disorders disrupt the normal flow of cognitive functions and emotional regulation, causing alterations in perception, judgment, and emotional responses. Cognitive processes such as attention, memory, and problem-solving can be deeply impaired in those suffering from disorders like depression, schizophrenia, or anxiety. These disruptions often stem from biochemical imbalances, structural abnormalities in the brain, or dysfunctional neural pathways. For instance, in depression, cognitive distortions often lead to negative thinking patterns, while in schizophrenia, disorganized thinking can lead to fragmented thoughts and hallucinations. Emotionally, mental disorders can alter how an individual experiences and expresses emotions. Anxiety may cause excessive fear, while mood disorders, like bipolarity, lead to extreme emotional swings. These emotional disturbances often interact with cognitive impairments, creating a feedback loop that exacerbates both emotional instability and cognitive dysfunction. Over time, the interplay between cognition and emotion in mental disorders can result in chronic suffering and a diminished sense of self. Social relationships and personal well-being often suffer as emotional responses become erratic and cognition falters, leading to further isolation and frustration. Ultimately, the relationship between mental disorders, cognition, and emotion reflects a complex web shaped by both biological and environmental factors, requiring nuanced understanding and treatment to address both dimensions of suffering. How does the subconscious mind influence behavior? The subconscious mind, a vast reservoir of thoughts, memories, and experiences, plays a pivotal role in shaping human behavior. It is not governed by conscious logic, but by an intricate network of learned experiences, automatic responses, and deep-seated beliefs. Its influence manifests when our actions are driven by impulses or intuitions, bypassing the rational mind. Through mechanisms like conditioning and repetition, the subconscious stores patterns that later govern decisions without active awareness. For example, past trauma can lead to fears or habits that arise instinctively, even if the conscious mind does not recall the triggering event. Connections within the subconscious span across both emotional and cognitive domains. Often, these connections are not immediately apparent, but emerge during pivotal moments, influencing choices in ways that appear rational. An individual may, without clear reasoning, avoid specific situations or people based on these deep, subconscious links. Development and change occur when conscious awareness and introspection begin to challenge these subconscious patterns. Meditation, therapy, and self-reflection can help rewire limiting beliefs or unconscious behaviors. The subconscious has a profound impact on an individual's life, dictating preferences, aversions, and responses. Its silent guidance steers life choices, often in a direction beyond our conscious understanding, underlining the necessity of cultivating mindfulness to better align one's behaviors with intentionality. Ultimately, the subconscious mind remains a force that shapes the essence of human existence, urging us to probe its depths for a more conscious, empowered life. What is the relationship between creativity and the brain? Creativity is the process of generating novel ideas, concepts, or solutions by combining existing elements in new ways. It is closely linked to the brain's ability to break free from habitual thought patterns and explore unexplored connections. The brain functions as a dynamic system where creative thinking emerges through the complex interplay of various regions responsible for memory, emotion, logic, and problem solving. The process of creativity involves multiple mechanisms. It begins with divergent thinking, where the brain forms many potential solutions or ideas, followed by convergent thinking, which evaluates and refines them. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, plays a crucial role in fostering creative abilities, allowing new pathways and associations to emerge in response to stimuli. It is the constant rewiring of neural circuits that supports creativity's adaptive nature. The brain regions involved in creativity are interconnected, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which governs executive functions, and the temporal lobes, where memory and emotional responses reside. The interaction between these regions leads to creative insights that are both original and relevant to the individual's needs or context. Creativity evolves with experience and exposure to diverse environments, challenges, and disciplines further enhances the brain's creative capacity. Over time, creative abilities can be honed or diminished, depending on mental stimulation and openness to new experiences. In conclusion, creativity is not a singular trait, but a complex, evolving process shaped by the brain's ever-changing architecture. Its impact extends beyond individual expression, influencing culture, science, and innovation. How do decision-making and problem-solving processes work in the mind? Decision-making and problem-solving are central to human cognition, shaping how individuals navigate and interact with the world. At their core, these processes involve the identification of a challenge, the evaluation of possible solutions, and the selection of an optimal course of action. However, they are far from simple mechanisms. They operate within the complex framework of the mind, influenced by factors such as perception, emotion, memory, and logic. The mechanism behind decision-making begins with the brain's prefrontal cortex, which evaluates risks, rewards, and consequences. In problem-solving, the brain identifies patterns and draws upon past experiences to form strategies. These cognitive functions are interconnected, with the neural pathways of memory often guiding decisions, while emotions influence judgments, sometimes bypassing rational processes. As individuals age and accumulate knowledge, their decision-making abilities evolve. Exposure to diverse experiences and refined cognitive skills enable more nuanced judgments. However, biases such as confirmation bias or overconfidence can shape outcomes, often leading to errors in both decision-making and problem-solving. The impact of these processes extends far beyond the individual. Decision-making and problem-solving not only affect personal success and happiness, but also influence social and professional interactions. In a world where rapid, informed choices are required, the ability to think critically and solve complex problems becomes increasingly vital. Ultimately, understanding the interplay between decision-making and problem-solving illuminates the complexity of the mind and the profound influence these processes have on every aspect of life. How does the human mind understand morality and ethics? The human mind's understanding of morality and ethics is a complex interplay of cognitive, emotional, and cultural processes. Morality is the set of principles that distinguish right from wrong, while ethics deals with the philosophical analysis of these principles. The human mind grapples with these concepts through cognitive development, emotional responses, and societal influences. At its core, morality is grounded in empathy and reasoning. As children grow, they begin to understand fairness, harm, and justice through experiences and social interactions. The brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex, plays a pivotal role in evaluating moral decisions, weighing consequences, and considering abstract values like justice. Emotions also influence moral judgment, with feelings such as guilt, shame, or pride guiding behavior. The development of ethical understanding evolves throughout life. Early moral frameworks are based on obedience and authority, gradually maturing into more nuanced views driven by personal reasoning and societal norms. This shift is shaped by exposure to different cultures, education, and life experiences, leading to a more individualized and sophisticated moral compass. The impact of this process is profound, affecting how individuals interact with each other and society at large. Ethical understanding influences decision-making, law, and policy, guiding collective behavior. Ultimately, the human mind's grasp of morality and ethics is a dynamic, evolving construct that balances personal values with communal standards. Can the mind influence physical health, and how? The mind, often perceived as an abstract realm of thoughts and emotions, holds significant sway over the body's health. This mind-body connection has been explored extensively, bridging the gap between psychological processes and physical well-being. It is rooted in the belief that mental states, whether conscious or subconscious, can directly impact physiological functions. Psychologically, stress, anxiety, and depression can trigger hormonal imbalances, such as increased cortisol levels, which in turn weaken immune function, elevate blood pressure, and impair healing. The body responds to these emotional states by engaging the autonomic nervous system, which regulates functions like heart rate and digestion. Positive emotions, however, can foster healing by promoting the release of endorphins, which boost mood and strengthen immune responses. The mechanisms through which this influence occurs are complex, involving brain structures like the hypothalamus and limbic system. These regions regulate both emotional responses and physical processes, forming a two-way communication network between the brain and the body. Over time, habitual thoughts and emotions can manifest in chronic conditions, such as cardiovascular disease or gastrointestinal disorders, underscoring the importance of mental health in maintaining physical well-being. By cultivating practices like mindfulness, therapy, and stress management, individuals can potentially mitigate the harmful effects of negative mental states on the body. Ultimately, the mind's power to shape the body reveals a profound interconnectedness between mental and physical health, challenging the traditional view of these realms as separate entities.